We are going to switch gears here. No other way to do it. All guests are coming to you via the Fire Wings hotline. Try one of their delicious flavors of wings today. Fire Wings. Just wing it. We've been promoting them all day. Scott Bair, our Raiders insider, joining us from NBC Sports Bay Area. Scott, 1-0 Raiders, and pretty solid and impressive performance in Week 1. What'd you think?
Yeah, I thought the offense really clicked and showed a lot of promise with several different skill players, and the defense started really hot, ran out of gas, but kind of held on strong. The Broncos are really, really, really bad, so let's not assume that they're world beaters yet, but it was a positive first step, and most importantly, it was a chance to turn the page after a week that was filled with drama and soap opera moments by you-know-who.
Scott Bair with us. Scott, saw your story late last night. Just such bad news for the Raiders leading into the game with Antonio Brown. Then they win the game, and you got so many great performances that we'll get into. Derek Carr not being touched, Terrell Williams making himself at home, Waller also making himself at home, and then Jacobs having the best debut, some would say, since I think it was LaDainian Tomlinson was the stat. But then we get the news last night, Jonathan Abram might miss the season. I saw he's getting a second opinion, but could you just break that down, and where are we at right now?
Yeah, I think we're towards a seemingly inevitable trip to injured reserve for a guy that was the spark plug, not only in the secondary and not only on the defense, but on the entire team. Jonathan Abram apparently, and I don't know this part, it's just according to Bleacher Report, tore the rotator cuff in his shoulder in the first quarter. He didn't have a tackle in the first quarter, but nonetheless, he hurt himself at some point during that game, I know, and it looks like he's going to have surgery and end up on injured reserve. That most likely means his season. The timetable isn't specific, but if you are designated to return on injured reserve, that's at least 8 weeks. That's the minimum. So either way, it's going to be a long time, most likely the entire year before we see Jonathan Abram. And this is a guy that during training camp, especially for rookies, veterans, temper the excitement on guys that have never made an NFL tackle, right? And I can count, it takes more than one hand to count the number of veterans who said, he's going to be great. He's going to be a guy that can make an instant impact for us, that the compliments were never tempered with this guy. And on Hard Knocks, he was a bit of a character with the salmon versus salmon thing and, riding horses and fishing and not knowing what San Francisco was and things like that. He was really a good football player that cared a lot about the game and maybe was a little wild and crazy, played with his hair on fire, and that would have been tempered, but it is a significant blow to lose a guy like that.
On the same night, the scariest moment was when Conley got hurt. I know he said he's good to go. What have the Raiders told you about Darren Conley?
Yeah, so it's anytime you're dealing with a neck injury, just like with a concussion, they take every possible protocol. And when you take the helmet off in those situations and the shoulder pads are on, the neck kind of naturally extends, so they don't mess around at all. They strap you in before they, really check you out. I mean, everybody saw the replay where Abram came in and his thigh and knee kind of popped Conley on the top of the head and compressed his neck in a way that did not look good at the time. So that's a real benefit for a guy who has dealt with injuries his entire career. Finally had a healthy stretch during training camp. It was really the first training camp he's ever had, and he was playing like a number one cornerback. So, the bad news and the good news of it, the secondary keeps one essential piece while losing another. And they have veteran Curtis Riley that can step in at safety for Abram, but it's not the same vibe there. And, Carl Joseph and Jonathan Abram were training camp roommates, and as a matter of fact, Jonathan Abram kicked Trayvon Mullivan out of his room to get Carl Joseph in there so they could work and build chemistry and learn together and understand to adapt and adjust to each other's movements and ways of thinking, and they would watch tape in the room, and all that effort and time was good for one game. And that's disappointing. Torn rotator cuffs are weird. If you look at, video of Abram after the game, he's got his big old cowboy hat on. He's, talking country and talking about hitting people in the, right in the chest and playing hard, and his face mask got warped. He was hitting people so hard. It is unfortunate for a guy like that to end up in a place like IR so early in his career.
Scott Bair joining us. Scott, the offensive line just probably couldn't have played much better. What a great showing from them. Derek Carr doesn't even get touched, and you got a couple of bookends in Chubb and Miller, of course, on Denver's side that were pretty much rendered useless, and no Gabe Jackson and no Richie Incognito. To break down their performance and also break down, where they go from here and obviously the effect that has on the ball club.
Yeah, I think it all starts with Roseville Loan, really. That Trent Brown was paid $66 million to do what he did, right? That's
Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah,
Sorry about that.
So Trent Brown is getting paid to do what he did, right? But to have Colton Miller after being set back by injury and, kind of being attached to some unflattering statistics last year, right? 14 sacks allowed in 16 games, and they came in bunches sometimes. And he's the type of guy who doesn't get terribly emotional about those types of things. And I talked to him after the game, and he's not going to jump for joy. It's not his style. I don't think I've ever seen his feet leave the ground. But nonetheless, you could see it in his face that he was proud, right? That he was proud of the performance that he and the line turned out in a victory. And there's so much talk about he gained the right weight. He did the right things. He worked his tail off. And to see that come together for a guy like that, a guy who just gritted his teeth through a knee injury that he shouldn't have been playing through, I think was a big moment. And it's not the only one that he's going to have, because coming up Sunday, it's going to be Frank Clark, and that's a redo of his worst moment in London against Seattle, where Frank Clark, beat a rookie on a knee that he shouldn't have been playing on in London on a big stage. And this is his chance to say, hey, to come back and be like, hey, buddy, my knee's fine. I'm 30 pounds heavier, and I'm ready for you. Mm-hmm. And I think that would be a great encore. It's a tough first couple weeks for Colton, but I think it all builds off of him. And he's the left tackle, right? There's 5 guys up there, but there's a certain standard that Trent Brown has set. There's a certain standard that Rodney Hudson has set. I think with the interior guards being reserves, with Incognito suspended 1 more game and Jackson out for at least 4 more, the run blocking suffered inside. But if Derek Carr is clean, we've seen what he can do. And if Colton can continue doing the awesome job he did Monday night and really throughout training camp, the guy was an anchor. If he can do that, the fortunes of I hate to make it sound like such a big deal, but he's the left tackle, and that was a big problem last year. And if that problem is solved on a permanent basis, this offense can really take flight.
Scott Bair joining us, Raiders insider, NBC Sports Bay Area. Scott, we use the word cathartic for the win, I guess, the way it looked to the Raiders, the coaching staff, the players, and then certainly the fans. I want to know what you felt about the impact the fans had in that game. So watching it on TV, they seemed as energetic and as loud. The AB chants, all that was just so palpable through the television. You were there. What kind of an impact do you think the crowd had on the Raiders' performance?
It is stunning and maybe even startling that was the last home opener ever in Oakland, right? That's normal. At these 7 games that are remaining on the home schedule should sort of be like a wake, right? Or maybe with growing levels of apathy, and that we didn't see that at all. We saw 50,000 strong, giving a one-fingered salute for 48 of those 60 minutes, talking about ducks a lot. From what I heard regarding Antonio Brown, but nonetheless, they were galvanized by the moment, and they, for as much as the Raiders post-game and really throughout, that losing Antonio Brown was not losing Khalil Mack, right? That this is a guy that clearly didn't want to be there, that frankly wasn't there very much, and always had a problem associated, always had a camera following him, that they were used to the drama in some ways. That seems like a line, but I believe it because of the way that they played, that they had a lot of time to adjust to Antonio Brown not being there, right? You know who didn't have a lot of time to adjust? Were fans, right? And there were a lot of jerseys sold at about $225 a pop with 84 and Brown on the back, and Fanatics ain't giving them money back, right? If I took two Benjamin Franklins, a Jackson, and 4 George Washingtons and lit it on fire, I'd be pretty pissed, man. Watching somebody do it and being really cavalier about it. And my Antonio Brown experience, I don't know him. I interviewed him 4 times. Once I felt like he was a genuine dude, and the rest of it I felt like he was an attention seeker. And I think the fans probably feel that way too, right? That, this wasn't a grand conspiracy theory that Oakland was a way station on the way to New England from Pittsburgh. Come on, okay? But at the same time, this is a guy that decided he didn't want to play for your franchise eventually, and he was too good for a $53,000 fine, which to me and you is like finding change in our couch cushion. That was enough to set him off and do his own thing. And fans had a right to, this is a very long answer, fans had a right to be pissed, and ultimately they expressed it. I think that was good for the Raiders. I think it galvanized that stadium and everybody against an enemy who was not there but was certainly there in spirit.
Josh Jacobs impressed in his debut. We talked about that, best rookie debut since LaDainian Tomlinson. A lot of that credit obviously goes to the offensive line, but what do you see in Josh Jacobs? And I'm going to put you on the spot here, and feel free to say I'm stumping you, but does he remind you of anyone? Is there an NFL running back, past or present, that you would compare Josh to?
Yeah, it's the guy you already mentioned. I covered LaDainian for 5 years in San Diego when he was peak LaDainian, like 32 touchdowns LaDainian.
He was a video game.
I don't know. Yeah, he was, and I don't know if Josh Jacobs is going to be that. Nobody does, and to put the Hall of Fame comparisons on the guy is obviously too much. But the reason why I say that is they are of the same build. They're not intimidating, but they're sort of like if you were building your own character in Madden, right?
Yep.
And you wanted like a lot of speed, but not a track star, and you wanted like a lot of size, but not Jerome Bettis, right? And you wanted like a lot of footwork, but not quite Barry Sanders or like Gale Sayers, right? And you wanted like physicality, but not like not full on battering ram. You have a guy that does everything well. Maybe nothing perfect. He doesn't look like Bo Jackson, but Josh Jacobs is the type that does everything pretty well. He's going to make you feel it inside. But the most impressive play to me is not him turning what looks like a 1 yard gain into a 3 or 4 yard gain. Those are essential. That's what the good running backs do. But when you saw brief glimpses in space on the reception that he had that went 28 yards, when you saw him finally be able to wiggle into some room, you thought, oh man, that kid's got more breakaway speed than you thought. And that was the one thing that that I hadn't seen. And the durability is always going to be an issue until it's not, right? His 24 carries or 24 touches, I guess, were the most touches he's had since high school. Because in Alabama, he wasn't asked to do things, and you can't do something that you're not being allowed to do. So can he respond with 24 more touches tomorrow? You saw the touch breakdown, right? It was like Jalen Richard had, a carry, and DeAndre Washington maybe had 2 or something like that. And he's going to be a bell cow. Can he survive all of those impacts? If he can, we could that could be not the last comparison to LT that we hear.
Scott, how on earth then do they pull off what would be an upset this week? I mean, to get Kansas City offense is as good as ever, gifted Pat Mahomes. What do they have to do to pull off what would be a huge upset?
I mean, it definitely helps that. I'm gonna get on a soapbox for a second. It definitely helps that Tyreek Hill is not available, but let's be honest, he should not be hurt. He should be suspended. But nonetheless, he is unavailable, so it doesn't matter how he got there. And I think that will be of benefit, but this secondary is going to get tested by pure and raw speed and by a tight end, and that particular tight end in Travis Kelce, and then generally tight ends as a position group have annihilated the Raiders for as long as I've been covering this team. But they have more weapons and they have more talent, and it will be, in my opinion, less on the defense and more on the Raiders offense to go ahead and show what they're really capable of. They're going to have to score a lot. They're going to have to win this game 38-35 or something. But given what I saw, I have changed my opinion in this game in this fashion. It is no longer out of the realm of possibility that they can win this game. Do I think they're going to win? No. Could it be a blowout? Yeah. But it's now within the realm of possibility. That's something that I couldn't have said before, especially after Antonio Brown left, until I saw that offense really start to work on Monday night.
Well, it's going to be fun to see this weekend. Scott, thank you for joining us. Have a good week, and we'll talk to you next week.
Appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
The Drive.